My Hero Academia Chapter 402 begins with a recap of the hero's progress and the current state of the various battlefields. Dabi's catastrophic heat had totally cooled down. Thanks to this, the many UA systems refugees in the area were now safe. Shoto has completed his mission. His part to play in this final war is seemingly over. Sometime afterwards, the spread of Toga's city-destroying clones had concluded. They were all vanishing before they could deliver fatal blows to the injured heroes. These guys have no idea that Uraraka saved them all. The UA fortress was plummeting down to earth like Onigashima from One Piece. The Twice clones were swarming all over the thing like ants. We haven't really seen the fortress itself in a hot minute, but damn. With numbers like this in just a few minutes, while also spreading over an entire city in the same amount of time, there is no room for debate. Twice had to die. Society looked at Hawks like he was a monster, but hey man, somebody had to do it. But at the same time, I'm sorry to admit it, but the League of Villains is just so dumb, man. Forget waiting for Shigaraki to awaken. I would have invested absolutely everything into Twice. This is what an inferior version of his quirk was able to do. He wouldn't even need numbers like these. 10 Shigarakis, 10 Dabis, and 10 all-for-ones, and just scatter them around. Boom! Game over for the heroes. If they insisted on having Shigaraki lead the charge, why not make better use of Twice's power in the meantime? If you don't trust Hawks, why not have the Twice with him be a double instead of the real deal? Or even just have a double of Dabi hang around just in case. And instead of waiting months for their leadership to return, why not have a double of Shigaraki do the job until the real one comes back? Easily one of the most dangerous quirks of all time, but it definitely could have been worse. The doubles managed to make their way into the inner workings of the fortress and were certainly weighing it down considerably, but they too began to vanish. Momo noticed and called this out to Hatsume Mei, who she'd been protecting with everything she had. And right now, I want you guys to know that we were robbed. At just a glance, this is clearly the most lethal Momo has ever been. She's got shields, a Gatling gun, rocket launcher, and pistol all connected to her body. This is, in and of itself, a use of Momo's quirk we have never seen before. She's sort of like a more versatile, yet less skilled and ranged version of Lady Nagan. Horikoshi made it clear that his original intentions were to complete this final arc within a year. But due to various health concerns leading to a ton of breaks and such, it may have been decided that this could have easily been cut from the story. But for as much as we want to see All Might and Deku do their thing, there is just no way we got Koda's quirk evolution and just skipped over Momo's moment entirely. How badass would it be to see Momo not have to hold back against these clones while protecting Mei like it's a critical moment in a zombie movie? I can't be the only one who thinks that would be incredible. From there, Mei shouted out that UA was now much lighter without the Legion. Thanks to this, they would be able to continue floating. Meanwhile, All for One was finally on his way to Shigaraki. He was officially within range to use his Gloop quirk, which is of course an inferior warping ability that allows him to bring anyone within range that he has a personal relationship with to his location. Deku was still fighting the Mad Destroyer Shigaraki and was using a braided black whip to keep the villain's hands in check. But Shigaraki didn't seem to mind. Detective Tsukauchi was assessing their current situation. Deku had jumped down from UA for the sake of remaining up close and personal against Shigaraki. And now, they've reached a standstill. The detective's hands shook from the dreaded anticipation. It was only a matter of time before All for One uses his warping ability. With an outstretched hand, All for One explained that getting to this point had been his goal from the moment he injected himself with Ares' Rewind quirk. He planned on giving the artificial copy of All for One to Shigaraki. And from there, his successor would finally become a stronger version of the Demon Lord. All Might couldn't even move his legs anymore, and his mech suit had been reduced to a single gauntlet. But he knew he had to do something. As blood flew from his mouth, he let his enemy know that he still had some fight left in him. The black sludge-like liquid began to form all around All for One's hand. With a smile, he refused to let Deku interfere. The process needed to go smoothly, but with that, he beckoned the other him to appear before him. The black sludge erupted from Shigaraki's mouth, much to his surprise. But what he did next surprised All for One even more. He firmly closed his mouth and gulped down on the liquid while telling his master that he is in the way. All for One was slightly disappointed while dismissing the attempt. Shigaraki's consciousness had overcome his own, but that was all right. With a wicked smile towards All Might, All for One decided that they would just need to go meet their respective proteges in the flesh. Suddenly, there was a rush towards the floating fortress that caught the attention of some students. The first-year students of UA's Department of Management were still recording the entire event. With a happy smile on his face, All For One moved towards them with a ruined All Might in hand. Knowing that they were being recorded, All For One began to taunt his arch-nemesis. He urged the hero to show the world how utterly pathetic he looks right now. He told the man to pay for the crime of encouraging their dreams. And as always, All For One is quite the poet. And just like his master, Shigaraki began to taunt Deku too. He claimed that All Might desperately needed saving. He told the kid that he should probably go save his teacher. And in the meanwhile, he would help himself to a killing spree involving everyone who hurt him at UA, which at this point would be a lot of people. Deku's pupils began to dance as if on the verge of tears. He could see it. The dangling and ruined form of his idol and closest confidant. He suddenly remembered the vow they had made after he learned about All Might's prophesied death. All Might promised to use his hands to shape his own fate, and Deku promised to be there changing fate by All Might's side. Deku froze for a moment. He began gritting his teeth as the emotions began to swirl. The tears were gone, but Deku still had to force himself not to cry. He remembered what All Might told him back when he first cleared the beach, that he needed to stop being such a crybaby. So now that they were at the end of the road, so to speak, he decided to be the perfect pupil and do just that. Yet at the same time, the one for all vestige of All Might with Deku said its goodbye a bit early. This was a very interesting touch, and I'm not entirely sure what it could mean, but I do have some ideas. Oddly, I'm inclined to believe that although it said goodbye to Deku, it has simply gone elsewhere. Over a year ago, when Bakugo died, the vestige of All Might appeared before him. But how is that even possible? Well, although it only happened in the second movie, for a time, albeit brief, Bakugo had access to the power of One for All. Maybe the vestige has now gone to him completely. This could end up giving Bakugo access to the power of One for All once again, and maybe even help with his current recovery process. We saw that towards the end of his confrontation with Shigaraki, that he suddenly began to read the villain's moves. Shigaraki was having a difficult time hitting him all of a sudden. What if this was a bit of danger sense? To be fair, Deku and Bakugo both having the power and fighting side by side was Horikoshi's original vision for the end of the series, although he ended up giving that to the movie. But based on what we've seen, especially after the first war, Horikoshi has no problem having the movies and other additional stories be canon. Bakugo may have been left to collect dust for more than a year now, but he's still the most popular character for the series, at least according to popularity polls. Every other big name character has already had their individual battles. Shoto and Uraraka, for example, are done. Bakugo was holding out for Deku in the early phases, but it would be downright criminal to have such a top performer be the only one to have failed. But going back to the symbol of peace, All Might is such an extreme outlier compared to the other vestiges that I wouldn't be surprised to know that the quirk has mutated and or evolved in some way related to him. Whatever the case, regardless of All Might's situation, I'm pretty sure this vestige will come up again at some point. This would be way too casual for a true departure. We haven't really seen what this thing can do just yet, but it is clearly different from all the others. With all his fury and not a single tear to drop, Deku shouted his master's name. Deku's days of crying are officially over. Now that is a pretty tremendous leap forward for Deku. He's always cried so much that you'd have to wonder if he has a tears quirk or something. So for him to stop doing that at such a pivotal and gut-wrenching moment is truly glorious. One for All is highly susceptible to those sorts of unruly emotions. Frankly, it's what All For One and Shigaraki are counting on for the sake of stealing One for All more easily. For as cool as Deku going berserk is, this is truly a monumental step towards him being a complete master of his quirk. That being said, Black Whip is still a quirk that is empowered by rage and aggression. So despite the abundance of tears, Deku has taken control of his emotions and allowed them to enhance his fury in battle. But now it was All Might's turn to reminisce. He remembered a younger Deku asking him if it was possible for him to be a hero without a quirk. The answer was clear and quite different from what he had initially said. Of course he could. All Might was certain of this because Deku was always doing his absolute best. He never gave up on his dream. This inspired All Might, because he also could not afford to just give up. More specifically, he couldn't give up on his dream of being the symbol of peace. The Madman hero lifted the final remains of his mech suit to the back of All For One's neck. the bracer itself resembling those once possessed by the only Class 1A member whose quirk the suit had not yet replicated, which is just what we anticipated. And shout out to the longtime members of the plot army. We didn't get a chance to cover the previous chapter, but some of you guys might remember the fact that we also predicted the death of Stain. By the way, for All Might to do this despite how he's being held by All for One is incredible. Even while severely injured, this man's core strength is crazy. All for One was stunned. Then his eyes went wide. He remembered the night when he finally killed All Might's predecessor, Shimuranana. Looking back, she told Gran Torino to take care of the kid. Pushing the young All Might away, she hoped that he would be able to see his dream fulfilled, which he was able to, as he did eventually become the symbol of peace. The horrific scene then unfolded just as we remember it from All Might Rising. All for One wondered why he was seeing Shimuranana's final moments. He remembered what he had said about her in the past, along with the image of All Might's fist on his head at the end of their previous fight. He considered the hero to be a fool for putting her stupid ideals first without having the power to back them up. He considered her death to be utterly pathetic. He then recalled her final words. And between this and how he handled the second user, I'm beginning to notice a trend of All for One holding people up by the neck like this. With a smile on her face, Shimuranana told the Demon Lord that All Might would be the one to defeat him. In the present, All for One's eyes were practically falling out of his head. He suddenly realized that All Might planned on blowing himself up. Then, the last thing Shimuranana ever said came to mind, that All Might is even crazier than All for One. With a bloody smile on his face, All Might wondered if All for One would rewind back into a kindergartner if he died again. All Might was willing to bet everything, even his very life, for the sake of victory. This is such a badass moment. All Might's words here make it clear that he is not even expecting to really kill All for One, but he is so grimy, so insane, so petty that he is willing to die, even if it is only to inconvenience the Demon Lord a bit more. Absolutely legendary performance from the symbol of peace here. Now, hopefully All for One doesn't pull some random yet super convenient quirk that negates this like he did last time, and many times before really. As much as we all love All Might, this would be one hell of a way for him to go that I don't think we want to see ruined. That being said, the explosive is only on All Might's arm. Perhaps the hero will only lose a limb on account of All for One's quick thinking. We know that Horikoshi loves to scar and claim the limbs of his characters at the very least. Regardless, this was a damn good chapter. And the final round of All Might vs All for One has proven to be one of the best fights in the entire series. Definitely top 5 at least. Let us know how you rank it down below. As always, I'm Celestial Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.